welcome again, everyone, to our final in this series of webinars on the GFF. Just to bring everyone up to speed as well, this was, I think, largely in response to a growing demand from the community that we restart these conversations with civil society with regards to what's happening with the GFF and the civil society consultation group. I know there were a number of conversations last year that GHC was able to host with the partnership and the various organizations involved. I want to obviously give all credit to the partnership and each of those organizations in the consultative group for the work that has happened over the past few months leading up to this point. Again, one of the first webinars in this series involved updating everyone on the civil society engagement strategy, which is a new component of all of this, and we were able to receive feedback from the community in addition to what had already been received via survey or otherwise. That strategy was then passed on to the IG, and we were able to have a discussion with folks just before this last IG meeting during the World Bank meetings last month in April. Part of that conversation was just giving people an update on things before that meeting, the agenda that civil society had before the meeting, other discussions that took place. And finally, this webinar today is a report out or readout from the IG meeting. So I just wanted to offer that a summary of why we've come together so often over the past 6 weeks or so, and really everyone again for your engagement, particularly the need that people had for civil society to be even more informed and involved in the process. And I know that a number of folks are available on this webinar to answer any questions or provide any additional comments as to how you can continue to be involved. So again, GHC is happy to serve as host for these, but I will kick it off to those who have really been leading this. Before I do, I want to remind people of the chat box feature. I think enough people have attended these for now to know that there's a chat box on the right of your screen that you can use to include your name and organization and then ask a question or include a comment. But with that, I think we're ready to move on to Aminu, at least. Again, I don't know if Angela has joined, but I know Aminu is on the line. He was able to address the group in advance of the Investors Group meeting, and I know has some news to share regarding what took place then. Aminu, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Luis, and thanks so much for all the organizers and the speakers and those who are able to join the webinar. I'm suspecting Angela is caught up somewhere because, as I mentioned in my email, I never thought today is going to be a workers' day, so I'm suspecting that many people also they'll be caught up with that public holiday, and that could be the reason why she's not able to join. So I'm happy that I'm in a good place, that I'm able to connect to the internet to join this conversation. So basically, I don't know if the connection is good for me to keep talking or there's a problem.
Your connection is great, Aminu. Please go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So basically, I'm not going to go through the presentation that we made, and Angela. Already, many of you received the PowerPoint, which was supported by Susanna Hodd, and is basically the summary of the engagement strategy that everybody already has a copy. So in that meeting, we spent some 15 to 20 minutes to go through the PPT of the strategy and highlighting some key areas that the IG members would be interested to know, and to also make some useful comments, basically with respect to responsibilities around the IG members to the CSO community, the Trust Fund Committee, the Global Coordinating Group, and also what is going to happen at the country level. And we also spend a little time to share some country experience to the IG members, because we feel that that's also going to add value to our conversation by sharing with them what we're able to do at country level. So we gave a detailed narrative of what happened in Nigeria, the face-to-face conversation in Kenya, in Cameroon, and also some other countries. So I would like to share with the audience now some of the key observations that the IG collectively made, which in the next 6 months that is going to also help us to move on. So overall, at the end of our presentation, the chair of the meeting, Chris Elias, actually called for endorsement and approval of the document, and the Kenyan delegate moved the motion, and unanimously it was fully endorsed by all the IG members, and they emphasized that in the next 6 months, when the next IG meeting is going to happen somewhere, we're expected to provide an update on the level of implementation of the strategy. So this is one of the key outcomes of the IG meeting, that we're expected to share every 6 months a progress report to the IG, what we are doing in implementing the engagement strategy. This is one general comment that has been made. The second one, which Susanna Hod need to also pick up, as she's the one supporting us to review the plan, is that we listed some of the different stakeholders at country level, like the CSO country coalition, the CSO on the country platform, and also the civil society coordinating group. So the IG members observed that in the strategy, there isn't any clarity that are we creating new coalitions, or we are riding on existing coalition already at the country level. So I was able to explain that the whole idea is that we are not going to create a new country CSO platform, but we are going to support what is in existence and look in the GFF engagement in already existent group. So they mentioned to us that that is not clear in the engagement strategy. The own understanding is from the document they read, we are going to create new country coalition. So they asked us to go back and tweak that section to really clarify that the coordinating group, we are not going to create new country platforms of the CSO, but we are going to identify existing strong national coalitions and now look in the GFF engagement within the country platform. So that came out very strongly in the conversation that we had during the IG. Then another point that the also IG mentioned is that at the global level, there's already the Gavi CSO constituency and also the Global Fund CSO advocate, the GFAN. So they're asking us, how is the global coordinating group also going to be linking and creating harmonization with this existing group? Also, the Universal Health Coverage 2030 Alliance, there's also a CSO engagement mechanism. So these three global partnerships, they mentioned that in the global, in our engagement strategy, there wasn't any clarity on how our global coordinating group would be linking with these three big networks and also providing some harmonization and coordination. Because the argument was that some of these coordinating groups are already working in the GFF countries. So, and there's only one Ministry of Health, and we need to be able to define in our strategy how some of this discussion will be happening, and also the harmonization both at the global level and also at the country level. This also came out very clearly in the observation. And we are also tasked to go back to the coordinating group and develop a costed implementation plan in the next 6 months that we are going to also share with the members and also begin to implement and also begin to observe how funding could be raised both domestically and also from the IG members. So these are some of the messages that actually came out very clear. And the last information was that, as you are aware, the GFF Secretariat want to commence the resource mobilization piece of the GFF by axing $2 billion globally through a replenishment exercise. So they also call on the CSOs to know how do we key into this conversation, how do we support the GFF Secretariat to mobilize resources, because if we are also doing that, we're also adding value to the GFF, and we are providing a space for CSOs to make a critical contribution. So let me stop here, but these are some of the key issues that came out clearly, and I'm happy to also respond to any question that I didn't touch while I'm providing this quick debrief. Thank you so much.
Aminu, thanks very much for your report out and also for being online. It's encouraging to hear about the endorsement of the plan and also that the conversations echoed many that I know some of us have had regarding coordinating with other similar groups and making sure that we are being sort of streamlined and recognizing that we don't want to put too much of a burden on people on the ground. And so it's very helpful to hear that the conversation sounds like it went well. I know that there is at least one question regarding your reference to a summary PowerPoint that I'm actually not sure everyone on this line received. I think that was something that had been shared with the consultative group, but perhaps not with this full group. And so we'll work to get that question answered perhaps later on this call and maybe be able to send out some summary bullet points that Aminu had referenced. I do, though, want to turn to John Townsend, who I know is an alternate IG rep who offered to speak in place of Angela, given that she hasn't been able to join today. So, John, thanks very much for that offer, and we shall turn it to you now.
Great. Thank you very much. I want to say Aminu and Angela were just spectacular, I think, in their representation of civil society. They framed, I think, the case really well and were responsive to the questions of IG members. I wanted to maybe compliment some of the points that were made by Aminu, and I will be brief. I think there was a sense of we should have a little better vision of the potential impact of CSO engagement. We gave lots of examples about what the impacts could be, but I think there was a need for kind of a more global focus of what the impact of CSO engagement would be, particularly on voice of underserved communities and accountability. The second was kind of linking, what's the linkage between these national platforms to the more grassroots CSO groups, particularly in large countries. There seemed to be an interest in capacity building to engage those groups in a way that they would have more active voice at the national level. The third complements the notion about Gavi and Global Fund. There was a question about the explicit link to PMNCH and using existing platforms. I think that we just want to make that one explicit so we aren't again in duplication. And finally, understanding a little bit more what kind of budget would the CSO communities, particularly at the country level, need to have a significant impact, and how would that be shared? That was a discussion that we decided not to the IG, but rather we would have internally over the next few months as we look forward to both replenishment and engagement with donors. So thanks again to Aminu for the leadership at last week's meeting, and for Kadi as well. Thank you.
Thanks, John, for that additional readout. We did have a couple of questions come through. One is from Anushri Shiror from Results UK. And Anushri wanted to know about more details on resource mobilization. I think this is a question we continue to receive regarding resource mobilization, and I don't have any other details here with this question, but I believe it could be twofold. I think there's this question that John just raised about sort of the need on the ground, the level of resources required, and then there's the other outstanding question regarding how to actually mobilize those resources. So the process for for acquiring those and disseminating or otherwise allocating funding to meet the need on the ground. Could either of you respond to that with regards to how it was discussed at the IG and any other insights?
I defer to Amino on that.
Yeah, John, you can proceed. Go ahead, please.
I think the question of exactly how and what type of resources and where would they, how would we raise them and how would they be accounted for wasn't explicitly discussed. I don't think we were prepared to do that. There is a small fund, I believe, about $100,000 that PMNCH has from one donor, of which 60% is for adolescents and 40% is for other focused areas. So I think just figuring out how to get that resource to countries on a priority basis is the kind of the first challenge, because that's already in some ways in the bank. What additional resources and who we would go to? First, I think going to the individual members, donors of the GFF would seem appropriate, but maybe there are others who would like to contribute to the GFF, but in a way in a way that supports CSOs more generally and doesn't add their funds to the overall pool at the bank. I think it's a very good question. I think we're going to have to just dive into it during the next couple of months, so that by the time we get to the next IG meeting, we will have had experience with requests. We would have had a more explicit plan and strategy about what the funds would be used for, and we would have a system for accounting for and monitoring the funds as they're spent.
Hi, this is Kedi. Can I add something to that?
Yes, Kedi,
you can hear me.
So thank you.
So the IG was preceded by a working meeting of the Civil Society Coordinating Group. And as Aminu mentioned, one of the things that needs to be produced for the IG within the next couple of months is an implementation plan for the civil society engagement strategy. And that will provide a more solid basis on which to resource mobilize, because we did hear from a couple of the IG members that one, they needed to know about a mechanism or platform so that there is no duplication. Two, they needed specific information on actual numbers, and that would need to accompany or be accompanied by an overview of what the actual impact would be, where and when. So one thing that we are definitely working on is an implementation plan that'll help us resource mobilize. The second thing that was discussed at the CS Coordinating Group meeting was the notion of a concept note on how support could be distributed to civil society organizations in countries, modeling ourselves on what the SUN, Gavi, Global Fund, and other partners have done. And that would allow all of the partners around the table to actually use that as a basis to resource mobilize specifically for civil society activities in countries. Now, some of the things that we've heard around the development of that proposal are that, one, we need to think about resource mobilization in country as opposed to just at the global level. So ensuring that while we are mobilizing resources globally for support to civil society engagement, that when engagement strategies are developed at the country level, there is some sort of outreach to the governments that are receiving GFF resources or other partners that have space in their budgets to see whether they can support civil society. That two, we do look at these efforts as an opportunity to align plans and more effectively and efficiently use resources. That was a big theme of the GFF IG meeting this time around, was that and this was in general discussions about the national platforms, that there's a lot of inefficiency in the current use of resources, a lot of it just linked to the fact that different plans and programs are being made in parallel but not in support of the investment case or national plan. So how can we make sure that civil society platforms are also using that kind of joint thinking to better use their resources? And then the third component, obviously, is how do we make sure that we leverage more resources at the global level?
Thank you, Kadi, for that. I'm going to skip to another question that's also related to financing. It's from SL Erickson, and the question is, please explain earlier mentions of a $5 to $10 million 5-year fund. Is this an investment facility in the business sense?
Sorry, could you please repeat that? I didn't hear it.
Please explain earlier mentions of $5 to $10 million 5-year fund. Is this an investment facility in the business sense? And that's all I have in terms of a question. I don't know if SL Erickson wants to provide additional comments or context.
Susanna, if I could jump in, I think I can explain at least what the question is referring to. On the last webinar, we mentioned that a ballpark estimate of what we might be asking for was in the range of $5 to $10 million, and that was based on the SUN model, which has a multi-partner trust fund that supports civil society engagement. I think that we were just referencing that as a rough sort of estimate because that is what SUN has done, but I don't think that there has been any decisions made about a specific fund. There has been some discussions about whether there might be some sort of pooled opportunity for donors to come in and fund civil society engagement together, and also discussions about opportunities where donors might sort of more individually fund efforts. So I think that's what the question is referring to. I don't know if others want to jump in with any more response on that.
No, I think that was it.
Yeah, I think so too. Thanks, Susanna, for refreshing our memory from that foggy World Bank.
No worries. I think just the bottom line is still under discussion and lots, as John said earlier, still to be kind of worked out. Right.
Susanna, since you have the floor currently, I know we have this earlier question with regards to the summary PowerPoints that Aminu mentioned, which I believe is essentially a summary of where we landed with the CSO engagement strategy. Is that something that can be made available to the entire community, or is there a timeline for making that summary available if it hasn't been made available already?
Yeah, I think that's probably referring to the PowerPoint that Aminu and Angela used to actually present the strategy at the IG meeting. So I think we can certainly make that available to the community.
Thanks very much. There's an additional question from Craig Burgess. First of all, offering congratulations to everyone who presented and was able to get the engagement strategy approved. And so again, congrats to our representatives. And then also a discussion about 2030, and so this idea of coordination again, but specifically how UHC 2030 can help coordinate all CSO efforts for immunization and then you mentioned MNCH in your report out as well, but was there anything, I guess, any specific action items for the UHC 2030 efforts as it relates to ours, or is that something we just need to go back and hammer out and come back to report out on later?
So thanks so much. Let me quickly say a few things which maybe also Kadi can jump in. From what I'm aware, we need to open a conversation with the interim secretariat of the UHC 2030 Alliance of the CSOs, which is the global health advocate for now, Anik and Bruno. And I'm aware that they are going to organize a small session at the WHA on the role of CSOs in the UHC 2030. So I'm thinking that could be an opportunity for Kadi and a few others that will be in the WHA to actually meet with them and begin to find out what are the common issues that we can coordinate together, especially at the country level, and also most importantly because already the WHO and the World Bank, who are managing the core team of the UHC Alliance, have already assigned an annual financial support to the the CSO engagement in the UHC. Every year, I think in the next couple of years, the Secretariat will be receiving 250,000 to improve coordination and also some little engagement at country level. So I think it's important for us to have a meeting with them and begin to know whether some of these resources could actually be utilized at the country level, both for GFF and also for the UHC. As you are aware that many countries, actually, the GFF grant will actually be used to catalyze the UHC activities. Like in Nigeria and many other countries, that grant will be used to support a catalytic role that will ensure the government is putting more money to implement the UHC. So that is already a clear relationship between the two. So I really want to propose that such meetings should be explored. Give it just 1 hour, few others that will be around to begin to find what are the common area that we can promote the coordination between the GFF and the UHC movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Aminu. I think that was helpful. Did anyone else want to provide any additional comments? And so we've heard from Aminu and John now regarding the IG. Kaji or Susanna, I didn't know if you had anything else to add or update the community on that hasn't already been covered.
So on not necessarily on, so maybe a couple of things. On the IG, I think one of the things that was heartwarming to hear throughout the entire meeting was that countries perceived one of the value adds of the GFF actually to be the national platforms or the integration of civil society, private sector, and other partners on national platforms, because in the past those platforms have been reserved to a smaller group of privileged participants. With that being said, the civil society engagement strategy was approved with a range of different partners raising a number of the issues that civil society have raised around transparency and inclusivity. So you're looking at the private sector saying the same thing, and you're looking at even some of the development partners, UN organizations and so forth, saying the same thing. So this does remain an issue that needs to be tackled from two fronts. I think we need to do our work from a civil society perspective to make sure that we're capacitated to engage, but it sounds like a lot of work needs to be done from a bank or government perspective to actually build the capacity of governments to engage with civil society. And so we hope to see that moving forward in the next couple of months. I think the other thing that was interesting to hear is that one of the biggest challenges to efficiency that the governments were facing is actually transparency around resourcing, and that from absolutely everyone. So it sounds like resource mapping has been a big challenge, and that is something that potentially civil society could help with. But then we need to keep in mind, one, for the resource mapping more broadly across all the different partners, but also within civil society itself. We continue to reference civil society and there needs to be included in this discussion because they're advocates and from an accountability perspective, and to a certain extent because of the implementation. But one of the things that we don't recognize is the level of resources that civil society actually bring to the table around some of these issues, and I think we need to move the discussion in that direction, but all a sense of positivity and of lessons learned in terms of the way that the GFF is advancing. On the CS coordinating group and the meeting that they had, just to note that the terms of reference for the Civil Society Coordinating Group have been updated, and we will be sharing that with everyone that's on the listserv to receive emails. And again, if people don't receive those emails, please let me know and I'll have you added to the list. And that will be accompanied with the summary of the various meetings we had with country focal points, which are interesting because it's sort of a definition by country civil society of where they stand and what some of the resource needs are around how they can strengthen their engagement in national platforms, as well as the meeting notes for the Civil Society Coordinating Group, which discussed what we might most effectively contribute to civil society organizations in countries. So any feedback on those issues as we start to develop an implementation plan, most welcome. And if you want to get those, please let us know and we'll add you to the list for that.
Great, thank you, Kadi. And is it okay if we go ahead and share your email with the folks on the line now so that they can be in touch with you, or do you have a general mailbox you'd like them to send those requests to join the listserv?
My email address is on.
Okay, great. We'll be able to get that out to people. We had a couple of people ask already, as you mentioned that. Any comments from anyone else? This might be the end of our webinar. Otherwise, we just, again, wanted to be able to close the loop on all of the discussions that have happened in response to requests for information from the broader community, and hopefully this provided that. But I'll pause there to see if anyone has any other either questions they would like to send online, or if any of the speakers would like to offer any additional thoughts.
This is John. Maybe Amino already kind of covered this, but one of the things that was really interesting, a number of countries took leadership in citing CSO, the importance of CSO engagement. And I think that changed the tone a bit. Nigeria, Liberia were probably the two strongest, but I think, and certainly Kenya also was in that group. I think the acknowledging the role of the country platforms, the importance in highlighting the value is really important as we move forward to get other countries on board with similar perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's a welcome, important point. Sorry, anyone else? We did have another question come in from Craig, who asked whether or not we provide input and updates or links with Gavi and Global Fund and other CSO groups. And so I think this was mentioned before, this idea of coordinating. Aminu spoke to the need to get in touch with the UHC 2030 Secretariat. Do we already are we already in contact with some of the other CSO groups that the IG recommended we liaise with? Kaji, in case we've lost Aminu, do you have an answer to that question?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
The question is whether or not we are in contact with and provide input or updates to the other CSO groups that we've been asked to coordinate with, specifically with Gavi or with Global Fund, similar to how Aminu reported out on UHC 2030.
So we currently do not systematically have an exchange with those two groups. We have said that that's something that we definitely need to do. We've created space for them on the Civil Society Coordinating Group, but that exchange hasn't been systematic. I'm scheduling a meeting with the Gavi and Global Fund Civil Society support team here in the next week to see how we can work together, because they're actually creating a subgroup that's going to be focusing on financing specifically. So I will definitely have a chat with them and report back on this in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you, Kadi. Appreciate that. Well, thanks again to everyone who was able to join. Thanks especially to our various speakers and those in the partnership. Let us know if you have additional thoughts that we can pass along via GHC. We shall, at the very least, be sure you all have a copy of Kadi's email so that you can continue to receive updates. And as mentioned on this call, there will be additional updates coming from this group with regards to the implementation plan as that relates to resource mobilization, and also how we will coordinate with other similar CSO efforts. With that, I wish everyone a great May Day, and thank you again.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Joyce.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, all.